I know the weight of human skin, not in theory in my hands on my table under my instruments. An adult carries roughly 8 pounds of it, stretched across the body like a map of every touch, every scar, every sunburn and childhood fall. It is the largest organ we possess and the most betrayed. We decorate it, punish it, sell it, judge it, forget that it is alive, breathing, sensing, remembering every contact like a diary written in nerve endings. I became a dermatologist because skin was honest. It didn't lie about stress or grief or the years you'd lived. It showed everything eventually if you knew how to read it. I thought this meant I understood people. I was wrong. I understood tissue. I did not understand evil until it touched me with fingers that felt like affection. My name is Simone. I'm 40. I practice dermatology in New Orleans, in a clinic I built from the ground up after Hurricane Katrina, when the city needed doctors more than it needed pride. I specialize in skin grafts and facial reconstruction for burn victims, people who have lost their surface to fire, to accident, to violence, and need someone to help them face the world again. I met Julian Devereaux at a medical conference in Atlanta. He was a plastic surgeon, charming in the way that old money is charming, effortless, entitled, surprised when the world didn't arrange itself for his convenience. He spoke about aesthetic optimization and proportional harmony, terms that made my work sound like interior decoration. But he was handsome, and he listened when I talked about my patients, and he didn't flinch when I described the smell of burned skin. "You see beauty where others see damage," he said, touching my hand across the dinner table. "That's rare, that's precious." His mother, Constance, said something similar at our engagement party. She took my face in her hands, cold, dry hands, manicured to perfection, and turned it left, then right, examining me like a horse at auction. "Lovely epidermis," she said. "The Devereaux women have always had good skin. You'll fit right in." I thought she meant I was pretty. I didn't know she was inventorying. Constance Devereaux was 73 when I married Julian, but she looked 50. Not in the way of women who exercise and eat well, in the way of women who refuse to age, whose faces are smooth masks stretched tight over something older and hungrier. She attributed it to good genes and l'amour, but I'd seen enough skin to know the difference between healthy and preserved. Her face had the texture of wax fruit, beautiful from a distance, wrong up close. She was obsessed with skin. Her bathroom had a refrigerator full of treatments, serums, masks, creams with ingredients I didn't recognize. She had a dermatologist on retainer, a facialist who visited weekly, and a wellness consultant who administered Roman IV drips of vitamins and antioxidants. Julian found it charming, maternal, the eccentricity of a woman who'd maintained her beauty against all odds. I found it familiar. I'd seen this obsession before, in patients who damaged their skin chasing perfection. But Constance's skin wasn't damaged. It was too perfect, too uniform, too lacking in the variation that marks a life lived. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself that old money had access to treatments I didn't know about, that I was being paranoid, that my professional skepticism was bleeding into my personal life. Then I met Rosa. Rosa had been my nanny when I was a child. Not my nanny, my mother's nanny, technically, but she'd raised me more than my parents had. She'd bandaged my scraped knees, braided my hair, told me stories in Spanish that I half understood and fully felt. She'd gone back to Mexico when I was 12, suddenly, without goodbye. My mother said she'd stolen jewelry. I never believed it, but I was 12, and children don't question the narratives adults construct for them. She appeared in my clinic 15 years later, referred by a social worker who'd found her in a shelter. She was 6'2", though she looked 80. Her back was a landscape of scar tissue. Not burns, not surgery, but the precise, patterned scarring of skin graft harvesting. Large sections of dermis removed, healed poorly, the underlying tissue exposed and recovered with split-thickness grafts that left her looking like a quilt assembled in darkness. I recognized the technique immediately. It was sophisticated, medical-grade, performed by someone with surgical training. But it wasn't done in a hospital. The documentation Rosa had minimal, in Spanish, with a clinic name I didn't recognize, suggested a donation program she'd been recruited into in New Orleans, promised $500 for excess skin that would help burn victims. She'd received $200. The rest went to processing fees, and the burn victims were wealthy clients who paid $50,000 for full-thickness grafts from young, healthy donors. I treated Rosa for 6 months. I reconstructed what I could, grafted what I couldn't, managed her pain and her infections and the PTSD that made her flinch when anyone touched her back. She told me everything. Eventually, the clinic, the recruiters, the other women, mostly undocumented, mostly poor, mostly disappeared after their donation. And she told me the name of the woman who ran it, Constance Devereaux. La Señora de la Piel Perfecta, Rosa called her. She comes to see the merchandise. She touches your face, your arms, your back. She decides which piece she wants. I didn't confront Constance. I was 32, married to her son, mother to her granddaughter, embedded in a family that controlled half of Louisiana's medical establishment. I went home that night and looked at Julian, asleep in our bed, and I wondered if he knew. If his mother's good genes were actually Rosa's skin, and the skin of women like her, women who'd been told they were helping others while they were being harvested for parts. I decided to find out. I spent 8 years becoming indispensable. To Constance, to her clinic, to the network of surgeons and clients who bought and sold human skin like leather. I used my credentials, my reputation, my access to the medical community. I became the dermatologist who evaluated donor quality for the clinic. Not officially, never on paper, but in back rooms and private consultations where I assessed the texture, elasticity, and usability of women's bodies. I hated every minute. Every time I touched a young woman's face and marked her as suitable, I felt myself becoming complicit. Every time I attended a procedure and watched skin being removed from someone conscious but restrained, I added another layer to the person I was pretending to be. But I was also documenting. Photographs, medical records, testimonies, bank transfers. I built a file that grew from 1 drawer to 3, then to a safe deposit box, then to encrypted drives I distributed to lawyers and journalists and FBI contacts I'd cultivated carefully. I learned the names of every donor I could find. Not all survived, not all could be traced, but I found dozens. I found their families, their friends, the empty spaces they'd left. And I protected Leela, my daughter, who Constance watched with the same assessing gaze she'd once turned on me. "She has your skin," Constance said when Leela was 6, touching her cheek with those cold, dry fingers. "The Devereaux skin, it must be preserved." I invented allergies, sensitivities, a rare genetic condition that made Leela's skin unsuitable for any procedure, any evaluation, any touch that wasn't medical necessity. I kept her away from Constance's treatments, her wellness consultants, her invasive questions about development and texture and quality. Leela grew up knowing her grandmother was strange, but not understanding why, not until she was 14, when I finally told her the truth. We were in my clinic after hours. I showed her the files, the photos, the stories. I showed her Rosa, who still worked with us, not as a patient anymore, but as an advocate, helping other survivors navigate the system that had used her. Leela looked at the images of harvested skin, of women with backs like Rosa's, of Constance's face at 73 looking 50. She didn't cry. She went pale, then red, then very still. She wanted my skin, she said. Not a question. She wanted to preserve the Devereaux appearance. I corrected gently. You were part of that, are part of that in her mind. But I never let her touch you, not in any way that mattered. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because childhood should have some protection. Because knowing this changes you, and I wanted you to have as much time as possible before that change. I took her hand, and because I needed to be sure I could keep you safe, that I could end this, not just escape it. Leela was quiet for a long time. Then, end it how? I told her about the gala. Constance planned her final rejuvenation for her 75th birthday. She'd spent decades replacing her skin piece by piece, face from a 20-year-old from Honduras, neck from a 30-year-old from Guatemala, hands from a teenager from El Salvador whose family still searched for her. But the grafts were deteriorating, rejecting, showing their age despite the constant maintenance. She needed a full replacement. Face, neck, hands, décolletage, a complete new surface, harvested from a single donor for consistency. She'd chosen me, not openly, of course. The plan was elaborate, theatrical, worthy of a woman who'd built her life on performance. A fire in my home during a dinner party. I would heroically save Leela, perish in the attempt, my skin preserved by the tragedy of my sacrifice. Constance would grieve, adopt Leela, and within months receive the donation from my estate, my skin, my face, my surface, transferred to her like inheritance. Julian knew. Not the details, but the outline. He'd signed the insurance policies, the medical directives, the authorization for posthumous tissue donation that would route my body to Constance's surgeons. He told himself it was for Leela's security, for the family legacy, for the greater good of the Devereux name. He told himself I would have wanted it if I'd understood. I understood perfectly. I'd understood for 8 years, and I'd prepared. The technique I'd developed, the one no one knew about, not even my closest colleagues, was a reversal procedure, a way to dissolve the bonds between grafted skin and host tissue to restore the original appearance underneath. It was painful, irreversible, and required the subject to be conscious during application. I'd tested it on tissue samples, on animal models, on myself in small, hidden patches. It worked. I was going to give Constance her true face back. The one she'd spent 50 years hiding, the one that matched her age, her cruelty, her decades of theft. The gala was at the Devereux mansion, a plantation house restored to antebellum glory, surrounded by oak trees draped in Spanish moss like ghosts of the enslaved who'd built it. Constance had invited 200 guests, clients, surgeons, politicians, the wealthy and powerful who'd bought her treatments or benefited from her donations. The theme was timeless beauty. The irony was not lost on me. I arrived in a gown of midnight blue, my skin bare of makeup, a statement though no one knew what it meant. Leela was with me, 16 now, dressed in white, her face unpainted, her hair loose. She'd insisted on coming. I need to see, she'd said. I need to know what we're fighting. Constance greeted us at the door. She looked radiant, 50 years old in candlelight, her skin luminous with the stolen youth of a dozen women. She kissed my cheek, my neck, the back of my hand, assessing, always assessing, checking the quality of her future possession. Simone, darling, you look exhausted. The fire has been, she paused, smiled, stressful, I'm sure. The fire hasn't happened yet, I said quietly. Her smile flickered. Of course not, dear, I only meant, I know what you meant. I met her eyes. I've known for 8 years. Every touch, every assessment, every treatment you've recommended. I know about Rosa, I know about the clinic. I know about the girls who disappeared so you could look in the mirror and see someone who isn't there. Constance's hand tightened on mine. Her nails, perfect, French-tipped, maintained by a weekly manicurist, dug into my skin. You're being dramatic, Simone, tired. The stress of your work, I'm not tired. I pulled my hand free. I'm prepared. And the fire you planned, it's already started. I pressed the button in my pocket. The screens around the ballroom, installed for atmospheric visuals, flickered and changed. Instead of abstract patterns of light, they showed faces. Rosa's face before and after. The faces of other donors, their names, their ages, the dates they entered the clinic and the dates they left, damaged or disappeared. The prices paid for their skin. The clients who received it. The surgeons who performed the procedures. The room went silent. Constance turned, slowly, and saw herself on the largest screen, not as she appeared now, but as she would appear without her grafts. The face I'd constructed from medical records, aging software, the photographs of her youth before she'd started harvesting. Wrinkled, sagging, 7 to 5 years old and every year visible. What is this? She whispered. This is you, I said. The real you. The woman who stole skin from the poor to hide from time. Who sold humanity for vanity, who planned to kill me for my surface because you'd run out of other sources. I walked to the center of the room. Leela followed, her hand in mine, warm and steady. For 8 years, I've been treating you, Constance. Not with the rejuvenation therapies you thought, with a reversal agent. Gradual, cumulative, irreversible. Your grafts have been dissolving for months. Tonight, under these lights, everyone can see what you really are. I turned her to a mirror, one I'd installed specifically for this moment, lit to show every flaw, every truth. Constance looked at her reflection and screamed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was the sound of a woman seeing herself for the first time in 50 years, of the mask finally falling away to reveal the face she'd spent a lifetime avoiding. Her skin was patchy, discolored, sagging in places where grafts had failed and tightened in others where scar tissue had formed. She looked like a quilt, like Rosa's back, like the Frankenstein's monster she'd always been underneath the perfection. But I wasn't done. I opened the doors at the back of the ballroom. Rosa entered first, then Maria, then Alina, then dozens of others, women with scarred backs, missing skin, stories of exploitation that Constance had believed were buried with their silence. They didn't scream. They didn't attack. They simply stood, visible, present, undeniable. These are your donors. I said to the room. Your sources, the women whose skin you wear, they're not here for revenge. They're here for choice, to speak or not speak, to accuse or not accuse, to forgive or not forgive, the choice you never gave them. One by one they spoke. Some named names, clients, surgeons, intermediaries. Some simply stated their presence: I am here, I am seen, I am not what was taken from me. Some stood in silence, their scars speaking louder than any words. Constance collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands, her perfect nails scratching at the skin she'd stolen. Julian tried to help her, to shield her, to maintain the performance, but the guests were already leaving, already making calls, already distancing themselves from the scandal that would destroy the Devereux name by morning. I didn't stay to watch her arrested. The FBI, contacted through channels I'd prepared for years, arrived within the hour. Constance was charged with human trafficking, medical fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Julian was charged as accessory. The clinic was raided, the records seized, the network dismantled piece by piece. I took Leela home. We didn't speak in the car, we didn't need to, that was 2 years ago. I'm 40 now. The clinic I built, the legitimate one, for burn victims and trauma survivors, has expanded. We added a wing for the women Constance harvested, not for reconstruction but for whatever they choose. Therapy, legal aid, simply space to be without being assessed. Rosa runs the intake. She asks every woman who arrives the same question I taught her. What do you want? Not what you need, not what you deserve. What do you want? Leela is 18. She studies art at Chilean, specializing in portraiture, faces, real faces, with scars and wrinkles and stories written in skin. She paints the women from our clinic, not to beautify them but to honor them. Every face is a map, she says, not of where you've been but of how you survived. I don't practice on Constance's clients anymore. I don't evaluate donor quality or assess usability. I treat people who want to be healed, not optimized, who want to live in their skin, not where someone else's. Julian is in prison. He writes letters I don't read. Constance died before trial, not from the reversal, though it left her permanently disfigured, but from an infection she contracted in custody, her immune system compromised by decades of grafts and immunosuppressants. I attended her funeral out of obligation, stood in the back of the church, watched the empty pews and the photographers waiting for scandal. No one cried, not even me. I keep one photograph in my office. Not of Leela, though I have hundreds. Not of my parents, though I miss them daily. It's of Rosa, the day she first came to my clinic, scarred, frightened, alive. And beside it, a photograph of her now, standing in our intake wing, asking what do you want, with the authority of someone who was once asked and is still learning the answer. I'm Simone, I'm 40. I'm a dermatologist who learned that skin is not just tissue but story, not just surface but self. I'm a mother who protected her daughter from a grandmother who wanted to wear her. I'm a woman who spent 8 years in complicity to build a case, who touched faces she didn't want to touch to save faces she'd never meet. And if you're listening to this, if someone is assessing your surface like property, if someone is planning to wear you like a coat, hear me. Your skin is yours. Every cell, every scar, every mark of age and experience. It remembers every touch, every wound, every healing. It is not merchandise. It is not inheritance. It is the boundary between you and the world, and no one has the right to cross it without your consent. Protect your surface. Document the trespass. And when you're ready, show the world what was taken and what remains. See you in the next story.